Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the second session of this weekly series on finding success as a sales Sherpa, lessons from the LinkedIn State of Sales report. So this is the second session of the week, even though it's Wednesday because of the holiday. Although I'm not even sure it's Wednesday because we are also, I think, in week 11 of the shelter-in-place quarantine here in the Chicago area. My hair is getting longer and curlier. It's now humid, so which is not helping anything, but that's all right. I'm excited that you're here. I'm excited to go through this topic today. As always, let us know where you're at in the comment section. Feel free to share your city, state, zip code, neighborhood, or country. Let us know where you're coming at us from. And also, of course, thank you to everybody who is watching these on recording. I've actually been doing these weekly series every day since the beginning of our shelter in place here in the Chicago area. We actually have, I think, 8 or 9 or 10 different series on everything from LinkedIn to online networking to managing uncertainty to starting a small business. Go check all of those series out on our YouTube channel. That's the link. I threw that down there below. So definitely check that out. This week, we are talking about the State of Sales report that recently came out. LinkedIn has put this out every year for the past couple of years, and it just came out. Lots of really interesting stuff in it. And what was really interesting to me is that it really dovetails nicely into something that I've been addressing for the past couple of years, actually ever since my book, Hyper Connected Selling, came out. And that was the idea of being a sales Sherpa, being a guide for the prospects and clients you work with. And, you know, the idea of selling like we used to, it's not quite cutting it anymore. And what the State of Sales report really highlighted is that the coronavirus pandemic and the ensuing economic challenges that it brought are not necessarily what was changing how we sold, how the selling process worked, but rather it was accelerating the already existing trends that were happening. And so what I want to do is look at a few of these trends over the course of the series that the State of Sales report highlights and look at what it really means for us on a day-to-day basis when we're out there trying to influence our clients and our prospects as far as how we're selling. So, by the way, just to point you to the LinkedIn State of Sales report, it's actually got a very long URL. So just Google LinkedIn State of Sales 2020. You'll be able to find the download and be able to check this out. But here are some of the enduring trends that it mentioned. Long-term metrics are stepping to the forefront. The data-driven sales organization is on the rise. Sales technology is transforming the sales organization. Trust gets deals done. Building a sales team with the right sales skills is challenging. Top-performing salespeople do things differently. LinkedIn plays an expanded role for both buyers and sellers. And of course, it is a LinkedIn report, so they got to make sure they're looking at how people are using their platform. But today I want to look at trust, and I want to look at the importance of trust. And this is one of those things where people be like, oh, well, obviously trust is important, right? There's the old sales adage, people do business with those they know, like, and trust. But I think because it is kind of a cliche, we really don't look at how important it is. And I think we've gotten away from it a little bit over the last couple of years where we were really rushing to scale. We were rushing, we were in a growing economy, and it was like, hey, how do we grow fast? How do we get things done as quickly as possible? Oh yeah, trust is important. I still remember the fact that this came out once where somebody's like, I think a good idea is to have a customer-centric sales organization. And I was just like, the fact that you can even say that means that a lot of people aren't doing it, right? What's going on here? And so I want to look at sales today through that lens of trust. And I want to look at a couple things that you can do strategically and tactically to build trust with your existing prospects and clients, with prospects and clients you'd like to have in the future. But I think trust is really, really important. And so, okay, great. I just realized I have none of my notes. So that's fantastic. And hello, everybody. Now, for some reason, the notes just popped, or the comments just popped up. So hello, everybody. Hey, Jennifer, thanks for coming and joining. Hey, Trina from 60616. All right, down in the city. Good to see you. Kim from Northbrook, thanks for joining. Marcus, coming from the north side. Very good. Hey, Carol, how are you? Coming from North Center. Good to see you. So for some reason, my notes did not show up. This is what happens, and I know it's happening for many of you when you're bouncing around between the living room table and your laptop up there, your desktop over here. That's all right. I remember what I was going to talk about, but I apologize if I'm not as smooth as I normally would be. But so let's look at why trust is so important, and let's look really mostly at the gap that we have. Now, I threw this out in the message that I put on LinkedIn about this topic, and I put in there, how do you define trust, right? Because trust, I think, is often one of these words that we don't have a full grasp of, right? We intuitively know. We know if we trust somebody, we know if we don't. But if you actually had to write down a definition, it's like love or freedom. What does that really mean? Or another sales word that tends to get a lot of, I don't know how to say it. It's an empty word in my mind a little bit, and that's value. Everybody goes, build value. What does that really mean? We'll talk about that another day. But trust, what does it really mean to have trust between somebody? And I think that this is a good way of defining trust. And it was from now, of course, I want to make sure I say this out loud, or I'm sorry, I want to read this verbatim because I don't want to screw this up. So let me find my OneNote where I know I can get this specific. And this is from Ron Burt. And Ron Burt is actually a professor at the University of Chicago who studies networks and professional relationships on an academic level. It's great stuff. His books are a little hard to read just because they're super dense, but there's one called Brokerage and Closure. Blew my mind, and it took me about 6 months to get through because I said it's a pretty dense book. All right, but I'm going to have this quote for you. Boom. Okay, because I think this is actually a pretty good definition, again, kind of an academic approach to it. But trust is a relationship with someone in which contractual terms are incompletely specified. So let's parse that a little bit and think about what trust is. Another way of approaching trust is from the book by Rachel Botsman, which I think is a really good, I do suggest. And it's trust is confidence in one's expectations. And what we were really looking at in that case, and that, by the way, is from Who Can You Trust, which is written by the author Rachel Botsman, as I said. But what's really a key element here is that there is uncertainty. And that's what trust is. If you think about it, trust is when you're not really sure what's going to happen, but you're hoping for the best, or you're expecting that what you think will happen is going to happen. It was funny. I thought about this. You actually have to have more trust in a girlfriend than a wife, or a husband and a boyfriend, right? And the reason why is because you think about it. If you're married, you actually have a legal contract. I mean, that's what marriage is. Versus if you're just dating somebody, you're just trusting them, right? There's no actual legal obligation that they have invested in. What does all this have to do with selling? When you're going out and working with a potential client, we have to remember that they don't know what we're going to do. And that's actually what really came through in the state of sales. So here's what's really interesting. So they actually tracked, let me go ahead and get the trust information here. They went and tracked this. And what they found is that the most important quality that somebody would value in a salesperson, if they're a buyer, the most important is trust, 47%. That's how important it is. But ironically, or not, I guess ironically at the same time, only 40% of buyers will actually describe the sales profession in general as trustworthy, right? That's that gap. And so what a buyer is really saying is, too often they don't know if their expectations are going to be met by a seller. Now, when you're walking into the prospecting, when you're walking into building your network, when you're looking to position yourself as a trusted advisor, as something they can buy from them, you're pushing up against that. You're pushing up against that lack of trust. That's why, in my opinion, building that trust first is so important, because if you think you're just going to go in there with a great product or a great service, I've got a great demo, or I've got this slick outreach approach, this perfect cadence of email, phone, and social media, it doesn't matter if you don't have that trust built. So that becomes, I think, the first job of any salesperson in the modern economy, because here's the reality. People have so much information coming at them, and they have a lot of information coming at them that they can't trust. That doesn't always meet their expectations, right? We don't know necessarily if a piece of news that we're reading has been vetted, if it's factual. I mean, let's put it out there, and I don't, this isn't a political statement, but Twitter recently, just I think yesterday, put fact checking on the president's tweets. Wherever you fall on the political spectrum, that says that highlights a lack of certainty, a lack of trust. And that's what all of our buyers are dealing with. In fact, there's the Edelman Trust Barometer, which comes out every year. It's a huge study done and looks at how people trust organizations, companies, government, NGOs, and all of those areas have seen a decrease in trust, except for, by the way, the people that we know, right? And so what's so important for us as a salesperson is, I'm going to highlight that salesperson, is to actually leverage our human ability to build the trust. Because, by the way, our buyers might not trust our organization. As I said, there's less trust in organizations generally, and possibly in our organization, possibly in the profession of sales. But we can still create that human-to-human trust. So how do you do that? And that's kind of want to give a couple ideas of how to build trust, because there are a couple tactics that we can kind of implement on a regular basis to build trust. And this is actually a statement from the State of Sales report, which highlights this need. Building trust begins even before a salesperson makes the first outreach to a buyer, by being prepared about who the buyers are, what they need, and what roles they play in the buying process. Sellers can start developing trust from the first interaction. Okay, so that actually keys us into a couple things. First of all, let's just call it, what branding do you have out there? And is it consistent with what you speak about on a regular basis? So, for example, very specifically, look at your LinkedIn profile and go, does my LinkedIn profile, is that consistent with a conversation I would have with somebody in the offline world? Because if your online presence, and I'm talking about the LinkedIn profile, but it could be anything. It could be your Twitter bio. It could be your Twitter feed. It could be your Facebook post. It could be a public Instagram feed. If what's there is different than what you talk about and what you say, that inconsistency, that incongruity kills trust fast, right? I know somebody who's not, he's a business owner, very successful business owner. He's not the nicest of guys. And in fact, he'll even tell you, he's like, I'm an asshole. And he is. And in some ways you kind of, you don't like him, but you respect him. You know exactly how, you know what to expect. And he completely follows through with your low expectations of him, but that's fine. At least you know that. When somebody comes up and is trying to say, like, imagine at a conference, somebody's like, I'm really successful. And they look like, they haven't showered in a few days. They're not well put together. They might be successful, but we don't trust it as much. So make sure your presence, even before you reach out to somebody, is congruent with the way that you show up, right? I remember when I started doing videos, my friend Carolyn Barth was like, hey, D, you should wear a button-down shirt. You should, when I just show up in a t-shirt, it's not consistent with my professional image. And she was right. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to make sure I wear a button down shirt when I'm doing video, because then people can trust me more, just because that it's consistent. So that's the first thing. The second thing you can do is before you reach out to a new prospect, and I think this is definitely in the beginning when you're reaching out, do the research to make sure that you're talking to the right person, that you can have a good conversation with them. This is not just hey, it'll help you sell more, but it is a big part of building trust. I get spam, for example, on LinkedIn all the time from salespeople, and it drives me batty because it's so bad. But part of it's like, hey, if you even took just a little bit of time, I'll give you a fantastic example. This happened recently. Somebody reached out to me about my podcast, Beer Beats in Business. Great podcast. You should definitely check it out at beerbeatsinbusiness.com. But they actually said, hey, congrats on getting to your first 10 episodes on Beer Beats in Business. We run a podcast production company that does post-production, and we actually are having a special. Would you be interested? Now, I might not, I wasn't actively looking for a post-production company, but I might be interested in it. It might save me some time and see what the prices are. But I've had a podcast for 4 or 5 years. We're getting close to 100 episodes. The fact that this was obviously just an automated message, I was like, F you. No, I'm not going to spend time even paying attention to this. That person destroyed all trust with me to the point where I was not even going to engage with them. That's why doing this initial research before you even do outreach is so important. So what happens if they do pick up the phone? You can have an intelligent conversation, even if it's just looking at their LinkedIn profile so that you can speak intelligently to them. That goes a long way. So that's the second thing we can do. The third thing to build trust. Trust comes from shared time, right? If you think about the people that you're around a lot, you tend to trust them more. Here's what's really interesting, and I don't have the exact name for this phenomenon because it's in my notes, which I don't have. But Malcolm Gladwell's latest book is called Talking to Strangers. I've read part of it. Interesting book. I'm a big Malcolm Gladwell fan. In fact, he was one of the 5 non-sales authors that you should read. We did a whole series on that. Check one of our old series of recordings out. But one of the things he talks about in this book is that human beings are wired to assume that somebody is trustworthy, right? We assume people are telling us the truth. And we want to give people exposure to us so they can assume that we're telling the truth, right? Because the more that we're around them, the more times that they're exposed to us, and the more times they're exposed to us being truthful, the more exposure or the more trust we build. That's where being present in things like LinkedIn come in the online space. This is where doing networking, when we can go into the offline world, can be so important. This is where even right now, reaching out to especially your existing clients and saying, hey, let's grab a 20-minute Zoom call. Would love to check in. That allows that empathetic connection, but it also allows us to have shared time together where we're fulfilling that person's expectations, and that creates trust, right? If you think about somebody that you work with and you've been in like the same office before working from home and you've known them for a year or two, your first instinct is to trust them. And that's what we want to really be able to lean into. The fourth thing we can do here is be trustworthy, okay? And that might sound obvious, but it's so obvious that people don't do that. And so, for example, if you're going to have a meeting, show up for the meeting. If you say you're going to email someone, email them. If you're going to call them, call them. It blows my mind. Actually, I'm going to be straightforward. It doesn't blow my mind anymore. I've seen this human beings do these things way too much. That doesn't surprise me anymore. But like just falling flat on the simplest of things. If I can't trust you to like send me back an email, how can I trust you to do, the business things you said? Like I can't. And in fact, what's really interesting is going back to the most important thing that buyers are looking for from sellers is trustworthiness. 47% said that's the number one thing they're looking for. The number 2 thing they're looking for, responsiveness at 44%. So that, by the way, those 2 things trump number 3, which is expert in the field. It's like, I'd rather you be a trustworthy person than an expert. That's what that's saying. So find ways that you can set up an expectation and then meet it. And by the way, if you know things are that you're not gonna be able to get something right away, just say that. I do that all the time. And it's something that I stand by and it works for me. So for example, if I know that I'm really busy, I actually just had some calls this morning with a few prospective clients for virtual speaking gigs. And I know that I've got a lot of meetings today and then I've got a lot of meetings tomorrow. I was like, hey, I'll get that to you. You'll have it by Friday. I've even said, it's Tuesday. I'm like, I'll try to get to you by Friday. I'll probably be on Monday. Is that okay? And sometimes they're like, oh, can we get it faster? And then I can work around. But most times people are like, yeah, that's fine. And then that's something I can definitely meet and maybe even deliver quicker. But, just be a person that shows up, that is not like, one of the worst things that in my mind you can be is flaky. You're like, oh, I've got this appointment set up with this person. I've got this phone call. We'll see if they're there. Or maybe 5 minutes before they're like, oh, I can't do it. You want to be solid, because when you are solid, that's when people can truly rely on you. That's when you become that sales Sherpa. That's when somebody just calls you up and says, hey, I need this. You're my guy. Like in How I Met Your Mother, Barney Stinson always had guys for tickets or for, a limo or for a suit. I got a guy. Like that's how you become that guy or that gal. You're just always dependable. You're always trustworthy. And when you're always trustworthy, you're trusted. Now, a lot of these I know sound like things, oh, I think I do this, or I totally do it. I'm totally trustworthy. None of us think we're untrustworthy people. But I'm going to challenge you to really look at how you're showing up and how you're interacting with your prospects and clients. Hopefully you're doing these things, but my guess is all of us have 1 or 2 of these areas where we can definitely amp it up a bit and show up a little more powerfully to our prospects and clients. And that's kind of the challenge I'm going to reach out to you today, because our buyers, again, whoever that buyer is for you, they want somebody who's trustworthy. And we know this because we're buyers, right? We're buyers. We're people that work with sales professionals in some way, shape, or form, whether it's in our professional life or personal life. And we want to be able to trust the people we work with. And we know, like, if we can't trust, like, there's actually stress hormones that go through our body. That's not a way to move business forward. Okay. So identify one of these areas, at least one, where you can put some work in and put some effort in it for the next couple of weeks and practice that, because I think that being trustworthy and trust comes from being trustworthy. Those are habits, and you can develop habits. And as you do that, you'll see the foundation for all of your sales conversations improves. It gets better. So thank you for joining us. We're going to continue to look at the next couple of sessions at the State of Sales report and how that actually will tie into being a sales Sherpa, but also, of course, how that ties in very practically to you being a more successful sales professional right now, but also in the near future. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Excuse me. I know you can also throw them down in the comments, but feel free to reach out. Make sure that we're connected. I also have a weekly email that I send out that I spend a lot of time on to share all kinds of great networking, sales, marketing, professional development ideas. If you're not on that list, shoot me a quick message on LinkedIn and say, hey, Dee, put me on the list. And I'll make sure that we get you those emails as well. If there's anything else I can do for you, please let me know. And as always, be patient, as we're in week 11 or whatever it is. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with others. Not only the people you work with, but the people you live with, because you might have seen a lot of them over the last couple months. So be patient. Be kind. Again, with yourself, with the people you work with, and your family, the people you're surrounded with. And take care of one another. And to me, that means right now, as we start to explore not being sheltered in place in a lot of areas around the United States, be safe, wear a mask, be careful, and wear a mask not just for you, but be respectful of others. Be respectful of others' space. You might be healthy. You might feel that you're confident going out into the world, but maybe somebody you're walking past, isn't as confident. Or maybe they're going home and they're taking care of an elderly parent who they live with, and they have to be around that person. So just be respectful of other people. We often talk about the freedoms we want to have. All freedoms come with responsibility. And I think this is the time when we all have to bear that responsibility. So enough of my soapbox. Have a wonderful day. I'll see everybody tomorrow at 11:30 Central. Tell all your friends and LinkedIn connections. And that's it. I'm out. Bye.